Welcome to the Power to Peace show. My name is Christina Wessendorf, and I am made to support you as powerful leader to create this deeply loving relationship to your family and partners, and to shift from the person who have to the person who is loved and accepted just the way you are. And today I'm very excited to be here with Mark Smith. Mark Smith is the founder and director of Family Tree Counseling Associates. He has been a respected therapist and author in the Indianapolis area for more than 30 years. His passion and thought leadership gives Family Tree its solid foundation. Read his articles, his blog, Relationship, Jazz, his ebooks, and watch his YouTube videos, and you will understand his unique skill set. He has world-class expertise in fear recovery, marriage counseling, narcissistic abuse syndrome, sexual addiction, abuse, trauma, complex PTSD, anxiety, midlife issues, shame, and abandonment issues. He has mentored and personally trained many of Indianapolis' leading martial therapists. If you need a safe, courageous, cutting, marriage jolting therapist, he is your guy. Thanks so much, Mark, to be tonight with me.
Thank you. It's good to be on your show.
Mark, I would love to know from you, what is for you peace, what we are talking about, and is it hard for you to get into a peaceful relationship?
Wow, that's a tough question. I'm in a relationship coming up on my 2-year anniversary, but peace in a relationship, I think it requires a lot of work on yourself. Most people I've ever met have been pretty broken. We're all pretty broken. And so peace is a result of a great deal of work that two people have done on their relationship to build an interdependent, healthy relationship. And it's a lot of work.
Right. And tell me, what is this interdependent, healthy relationship? And right, so what is maybe the most common advices you give people first, like how to move to it?
I'm going to draw it for you. It'd be a little easier for me to draw it.
Yeah, please.
So when people fall in love, which is a lovely thing and a wonderful thing, there's a lot of energy and chemistry involved. So what it looks like, we call it becoming enmeshed. Looks like this. It's two people.
I see it.
They're feeling the chemistry, they're feeling the love, and they just draw into each other, and it's addictive and magic. But when you start like this, as we all do, my experience has been people over time, this wonderful, delicious enmeshment only has a shelf life of about 7 years. So the 7 years go by, you have 2 or 3 kids, you have mortgages, you have jobs. 20 years later, he's over here, she's over here, and you can be whole where that person used to be. And this is the human condition. And many times what people do is, rather than dig in and work on themselves, they think, I know the problem, it's my spouse. I'll just get rid of them, and then I'll go get this good stuff, this fun enmeshment stuff, you know. But interdependent, you ask what interdependent was, it looks like this. So there's interdependent. It's two whole, healthy people who have a strong sense of identity, and nobody's overly defensive. Nobody has an active addiction. They're really, really, really good at listening and hearing each other. Both of them are in touch with their emotional neediness, and they're able to vulnerably pursue the other person and communicate what their needs are. Like I said, it's not common in the world. It's something that comes as a result of two people that have done a lot of work on themselves and healed the wounds from their family of origin.
But I think that's a great news, Mark. It's great that, when I'm struggling with creating connection and a love connection and a deep connection, that you tell me now that all the people you met, right, in your last 30 years career.
Sounds like you're singing.
Yeah, so I mean, sad that it's normal that you have to work at it, and yeah, that you have, right, that it's moving on. You have to decide to move on, maybe. Yeah.
Well, marriage is designed to provoke people to grow and heal. So you may have an opportunity to work just because when you're in this distant, emotionally cut off place, it's not working. And so that's where I see couples mainly starting in their 40s, late 30s, early to mid 40s. The kids have become more independent, and then mom and dad are left to have to deal with the issues in the marriage. And it is good news that everybody has the opportunity to heal and grow rather than get divorced every 7 to 10 years.
Absolutely. So what you think, like, I'm catching myself, right? I'm here and the partner I want to connect with is here. And right, I feel like the other person becomes not what I want to be, or like you said, the spouse is like the person who's not creating connection. And I feel like, I'm asking the person maybe to connect and do something, and it's just not happening. And I'm standing there and just watching, and I don't know what to do.
We didn't have a good connection the other day where I was trying to explain the concept of counter dependency.
Yes.
But that's what you're describing. It's sort of like a milder form of narcissism. It's not narcissism, but I'll draw it for you again.
Yeah,
I was going to be drawing so much, but I think people are visual, and it helps them to see things drawn. So here is a person they're walled off. They're not available for emotional connection. They have a wall built around their defense mechanisms and in their belly. So here it is. That's the wall. And this person, you can't really connect on a deep emotional level with this person. And here there's their neediness, but there's also their woundedness. And this person right here, they're not ready to work on their wounds. So they're really not a good candidate for emotional intimacy either. And this is where I see couples, because one partner who's cut off will come in and say, I'm lonely. We don't talk. We don't touch each other's souls. We don't make love. We don't connect in ways that my soul thirsts and longs to connect. And then that other person, it's incumbent upon them to do some work on themselves. So what I try to do with somebody like this is cut into their defense mechanisms with things that are true. What are your wounds? Who are you? Where did you come from? Who was your dad, and how did he love you? Who was your mother, and how did she love you? And what got passed down to them by their parents? So I share that, and when this happens, sometimes it sort of wakes them up and they start to bleed a little bit psychologically. But normally they're already bleeding some from the conflict and the pain in the marriage that one person has been sharing with the other person.
Means I like it. So means finally, when I catch myself that I build walls to not let the person emotionally into my space, that an advice for you is to, even if it's hurting, to talk to persons like you, or to ask themselves, like, okay, what is just my past, and where did I come from that I'm now like this, that I'm still defending like this, right?
My experience has been if somebody is really shut down emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
and there's conflict brewing in the marriage, they usually can't fix it themselves.
Yeah.
They, you know, if you need a doctor, you go to a doctor. If you need somebody to fix your roof, you hire somebody to fix your roof.
Mm.
If if your ability to be emotionally intimate is broken, then go to a really good couples therapist that can teach you what it is, what is the nature of the thing that's getting in the way.
Mm. I would love to ask you to to figure out another example with me. So now this was the first person, right, um, who is staring at a partner and don't understand why she or he is not connecting. So and then there is the person who who have a great career and seems like the connection to the wife or husband is okay, maybe not the best, right? But like you said, like they feel like the souls are not touching or it's somehow empty, right? But it's a person who has a lot of control over their life normally. So they have like they feel like they have a lot of stable points, right? Maybe their own company and so on. So what would you advise to this person?
Well, you're describing a counter-dependent, and a
Mm,
counter-dependent is somebody who's highly confident. They
mm,
think they're right.
mm-hmm,
Many times they are right. They tend to be gifted people, but nobody's always right.
mm,
Okay, they tend to be highly independent. They're not in touch with their emotional needs. They tend to be oblivious. They tend to be self-absorbed. They tend to be workaholics,
mm,
and they do have strong needs for control. They
mm,
probably grew up in chaos. They maybe had an alcoholic parent or some kind of other chaos in the family. So
mm,
they don't like chaos. So they arrange their life to where they're in control most of the time. So what I would say to their spouse, who's usually a codependent,
mm,
they're too passive, they're too other-centered, they're too dependent, and they're more towards insecure.
mm,
Is they need to heal their codependency. Maybe start with reading the book Codependent No More,
yeah.
and they need to become more powerful, and they need to take that power and make an impact with this walled off person that they married. But one thing I teach them is everybody always marries the right person. You always fall in love with the right person. Who's the right person? Is the right person somebody who's super loving and deep and flexible and non-controlling and spiritual? Probably not, unless you grew up in an exceptionally healthy home.
Mm,
For most of us, the right person is like they're so wrong for us, they're right for us. So if you grew up being abandoned, uh, your picker of people who you're going to be attracted to is going to be calibrated by how you were loved growing up.
mm,
So if you were abandoned, you're going to pick somebody who abandons you.
mm,
So that's the opportunity that the spouse of a disconnected person has, is they have an opportunity um, to to correct the wounds of their childhood and to squeeze some blood out of a turnip. Somebody who's like their parents, but if they both get involved in a recovery process,
mm,
then the counter dependent can become more human, more interdependent, more mellow, more
mm,
sweet, more kind, more gentle,
mm,
more vulnerable, less reactive, less controlling,
mm,
all while the codependent is becoming more self-differentiated, more assertive, more joyful, less victim-y, stronger and more substantial and fierce. And so they both grow away from the distance and toward each other, but they don't enmesh. This is a more mature and healthier brand of love.
It's interesting because two things. Because first of all, like you would not, when we talk about this person who has a lot of control, you would first advise to the partner to check on themselves first, and not on the person who needs, like what is with the person, like, you know, who needs to like you said, to melt a bit more, to become more soft and more kind.
Well, generally they don't even show up at a counselor's office. The only time they show up at a therapist's office,
okay,
they don't aspire to become less controlling and more humble.
Yeah.
They're still aspiring to take over the world.
Yeah.
Right. So the only time they come to my office is if they're in trouble in their marriage, and their spouse is saying, I'm lonely, I'm disconnected.
Okay.
I don't feel loved. I need a connection. I need a conversation. I need your time. So yeah, the counter dependent comes in and they sit there and they're like, dazzle me, you know, do your magic. I'm just here to get out of trouble. And so they're not ready. So here's the analogy I use. We live in Indianapolis part of the time. We live in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. In between, there's some mountains in North Carolina near Asheville. So the counter dependent is a big stone mountain. They're just walled off, and they don't know who they are. They think they put their childhood in their past, and they really haven't. And so when you drive through those mountains, there's tunnels. There's a couple of tunnels. And so the tunnels are built by an engineer, and they use dynamite. Okay. And so in this analogy, the codependent is the engineer, and their anger is the dynamite. So as they become more powerful, they know where to put the dynamite, and just to they don't want to blow up the whole mountain, because that would be a divorce. But they've got to become non-reactive and powerful and set boundaries with consequences. If they become reactive and yell and scream and cuss and carry on, then counterdependent's just going to get defensive and stubborn. And they're not going to hear the pain of the codependent.
And I like what you were saying, because then you were describing the end result. What was so beautiful, you said that the spouse, you know, become more independent, more saying what she wants, and this counter-dependent becomes more, or gets the result that it's somehow, how can I say? Yeah, somehow it's more easy maybe to communicate, right? Because she or he has the impression that she get hurt, or he get hurt, and somehow to become this more, the softer part gives marriage, like you said, a lot of learning, a lot of rising up and push it to another level, right?
Yeah, we all have a wounded little kid at our core, and one of the things that is fulfilling about my work is I'll have a couple in front of me, either on Skype or in my office in Indianapolis, and one of them will start to cry, and you can see the wounded little kid in their face and in their eyes. And then this person who was their adversary, who was a combatant, who was critical and angry, there's a tear coming down their cheek, and their partner reaches over and wipes off the tear. And it's beautiful. So instead of judgment, there's empathy. And it really is a beautiful moment when instead of just viewing the outer behavior of a broken, walled off person and feeling victimized and critical and contemptuous, you see the wounded person, and then there's vulnerability and there's empathy, and it's beautiful.
Tell me again, so what is the beautiful part when I'm vulnerable and showing that I'm weak?
When we were little kids, most of us didn't get what we needed. And when two people are healing the core of their own being and they're becoming healthier, in essence, you get the good parenting and the tenderness and the kindness and the acceptance and the love that you didn't get in your childhood. And that moment, when I see it, it's just very sacred, and it's sometimes they'll hug each other and they're both crying, and it's beautiful, beautiful stuff.
Wow. So I'm so sure that your work is so important. And I would love to know, as also for the person who's watching now, like, do you have, or can you explain a bit more from your work? Like, maybe how do you guide this couple through the first steps, or maybe the first words you're saying?
Well, what I do is at the beginning of the session, I'll ask them, the person who contacted me and set it up, I'll ask the other person, I'll tell them what the first person said, and I'll say, what is your take on the marriage? And then I tell them, for me to really be helpful, I need to really understand you. And so I spend time, this is a family tree.
Wow.
And I spend time gathering information about parents and about grandparents. You can't know somebody until you know their heritage, and you know their childhood, and you know their siblings, and you know their woundedness in their childhood. So we spend 2 to 3 sessions, me just getting to know them. And then the third part of the process is I'll study that in depth, and I'll write down 2 to 3 pages of thoughts, and I'll do a presentation. We call it a feedback session, and it illuminates. Good therapy is about things that are true.
Yes.
And so I help to name. Somebody will say, "Oh, I had a great childhood." I'm like, "Well, your dad was an alcoholic and your mom died when you were 6. You didn't have a great childhood. You were wounded. Let's revisit that. It's just their walls being too wounded to be able to face their pain." So in an example like that person is too walled off to have intimacy. They can go make a lot of money. They can go be a president of their own company, but they can't be intimate in a long-term relationship, because that would mean having their walls come down and having to feel in them is a wounded little kid who was really damaged by mom dying when they were 6. It was the biggest thing that's ever happened to them. So in order to heal a marriage, you have to heal yourself. And in order to heal yourself, you got to dig into the wounds from your family of origin.
So means that it's so interesting. Means that finally you put a lot of work in studying this like you said, a heritage in the past, and then confronting the person with what you found out.
Yeah.
Right.
I tell people I try to comfort the disturbed and I try to disturb the comfortable.
And what happened then? Because I imagine that it's such sensible subject that, I mean, right, that you don't want the person just to leave the Skype or the online meeting because they feel so attacked, right?
Yeah. Well, I share gently and I share kindly, but I share firmly, and I tell them, you are going to either learn something or I will chase you out the building. And I really don't care if you get chased out the building or if you learn something. Those are the only two options. So the closed off person probably won't stay long. There's a verse in the Bible that says, do not strongly rebuke a mocker lest they hate you. And a mocker is somebody who's walled off and defensive, and they can't handle the truth. But if they come into a good therapist's office, you're going to find out the truth and you're going to tell them the truth anyway. Very, very, very rarely does somebody get upset and leave the office.
Okay, great.
And about 80% of them leave having learned so much that it changes their whole lives. It stuns them with a new, Stephen Covey, he said, if you want to help somebody quickly, change their paradigm. So they come in with the paradigm, my spouse sucks. That's their diagnosis. And I try to sell them on the paradigm of, you picked your spouse for a reason. They're the right person.
Yeah.
You don't really have a marital problem. The marriage is the cure, not the problem. You have a childhood problem. You know, you were wounded in some way as a child, and then you deliberately but unconsciously went out and picked somebody just like the person who wounded you as a child, and now you think it's all their fault. So that's the paradigm shift, is there are no victims in marriage. That this person and the pain that they bring to you is a gift, and it's all about learning and healing that wounded little kid that's at your core, and not blaming the other person. What happens is sometimes then people don't listen, they get divorced, and then who do they go out and marry? They go out and marry the carbon copy, same person, different name, but they're exactly the same personality as the person they just got rid of, and then they're right back in the same boat.
Great. So it's fascinating. So right. So finally, the person who's sitting in your office, they have like choice. And I love what you said. I would love to repeat it. It's like you married this person for a reason, and it's absolutely the right person now for you. And in order to grow together, or to grow also yourself, to improve your life quality and your connection in your marriage, is that you take the jumps and you listen to what I'm saying, and you make the work yourself. And finally, it's the benefits, right? Is this strong connection, and this that they heal the wounds. Yeah.
Right. So I tell them, it's not about going to counseling and having magic done. You go to the dentist and they do all the work. But with changing your life, it's your job, and it's your practice, and it's a lifelong project of recovery. I call it recovery. And how recovery works is something has to penetrate that outer wall. As long as you're walled off, nobody can really reach you.
Mm-hmm.
So usually the thing that penetrates the wall is pain in a relationship. So the second thing that happens in recovery is you get enlightenment, you get insight, you read books, you watch videos, you listen to podcasts, you hear the feedback of the therapist, and you're going, oh, bang, I got it. I'm a counter-dependent, I'm a codependent, or I'm walled off, or I have trauma, or I have PTSD. The third thing that happens is what I call deep processing. Mm-hmm. And what that is crying it out. Really, most of us have deep wounds that have a lot of tears. And a wonderful, wonderful way to heal is to cry and cry and cry and cry. It's not depression, that's healing. And then you get done with a session of crying and you're like, I feel better. It's like a weight off your shoulder. Something has been healed deep inside you. And that's when you're a good candidate for renegotiating your whole life and being more open to adventure and more open to change and more open to connection and love.
Wow. Mark, I would love to know, you told me that you can offer the person who's watching now something to connect deeper with the subject, to go further and to discover more about how they can create this connection.
Yeah, I wrote a book years ago about counter-dependency, wow. mainly in men. There's a verse in the Bible, and it says, the wounds from a friend are faithful, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. So the book I wrote was a punch in the mouth from a friend.
Wow.
And in the book, I'm basically discussing the dynamic of a counter-dependent who's arrogant and independent and oblivious and addictive and workaholic and controlling, to have them humbled and broken and punched in the mouth, so to speak, by a partner who's become newly powerful, newly. I tell some of the wives I work with is I got to become Braveheart with the paint on the face and walking around on the horse, being a fierce, strong woman who is not going to be controlled in her life anymore. And so that's the book, A Punch in the Mouth from a Friend, and it addresses both the counter-dependent who needs to soften up that hard shell and the codependent who needs to grow some assertiveness muscles.
Wow, thanks so much, Mark. And for you who is watching now, check out the link, click on the link below, and get your version of the book. I'm sure it's super helpful. You are here in this interview, you watch this interview for a reason. And I'm sure it will give you a lot of insights. It will give you some new steps, some new ideas of viewing your life, of watching your life, and also some first ideas how to move away from how you practice your life until now and to move to this peaceful and to this connection state. So I'm so excited for you to move on. Watch also the next interview and the next email with an expert who will have another way to talk about life, another way to touch you and to give you what you need. So thanks so much, Mark. It was amazing to have this interview with you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Christine. I enjoyed it.
Thanks so much, and bye-bye.
Okay. Take care.
Bye. You too.
Bye-bye.